Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Total Michigan, where we interview ordinary Michiganders doing some pretty extraordinary things. I'm your host, Cliff Duvinois. It's cider time in Michigan, that magical 2-month period between the end of September and October where everybody's thoughts are turning to fall. The leaves are going to be turning colors here shortly, and all we can think about is having some really nice hot apple cider and cider donuts. And today, I'm actually sitting at Robinette's Apple House and Winery, located just outside of Grand Rapids. And I have to give a shout out to our friends at Pure Michigan for identifying Robinette's as one of the top cider places in Michigan. To talk to us today about all things Robinette's is actually Allan Robinette. Allan, how are you?
Great. How about yourself, Cliff?
I am doing awesome. Thank you for asking. Why don't you tell us, where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
So I'm from right here in Grand Rapids. So I grew up right here on the farm. I worked on the farm throughout school, and for a brief time, I tried the whole college thing. I was studying business management at the Grand Rapids Community College, but partway through, I decided, I was already working full-time and going to school part-time, and I decided to just really focus my efforts on working here on the farm.
Now, why did you decide to go into business management?
Well, I wanted to really expand my capabilities. I knew that I really wanted to stay on the farm here. There was some brief, hesitation that everyone has when they're 18, 19, saying, what do I really want to do? But
I know there's a whole world out there. Yep.
But shortly after that, there wasn't really a moment. I just kind of stopped wondering, and I just started doing. And so I stayed here on the farm. I farmed with my dad and my 2 uncles. And there was a moment I was taking a small business management class, and I realized what I was doing on the farm every day, managing a small business, I was kind of learning more than I was learning in the class. So I decided, I'm paying tuition for a degree that I'm not really going to use. I already have my career. So college is always there if I want to go back. But for right now, I'm a farmer, and that's my plan for the foreseeable future. Experience
is the best teacher. Yes, indeed. So let's talk a little bit about the history of the farm. And I got some more questions for you, but let's go back. Talk about, when did your family, because you said you're 5th generation, right? So talk to us about, take us back to when the family first got this farm.
Yeah, so in 1911, my great-great-grandfather, Barzilla Robinette, bought the farm. So he was a 65-year-old farmer from Bedford, Ohio.
Wait a minute, he was 65 when he bought it?
Yes, in 1911.
Oh, okay, all right.
I have to double check. I think that was around the average age of death in 1911, right around there. People didn't live too much older than that. There's a reason nobody goes and buys businesses at 65 even now. But so I'd love to know what was going through his mind. They were general farmers. They had, livestock and some corn and wheat down in Ohio, but he decided to become a fruit farmer up in Michigan. So he visited Grand Rapids and decided to move the family up here. And the interesting story is my great-grandfather was out west threshing wheat. That was where the work was.
Right.
So he had hopped a train and went out west to work out that way. And when he got home, the farm wasn't there anymore. So that, there's no way to get word to him. So when he got home, the neighbors said, oh, they're up in Grand Rapids. So he came up here and took over the farm from my great-great-grandfather. So my great-great-grandfather, Barzilla, as I mentioned, he always said that never feel like you have to name any children after me. It's a very unique name, but
I've never heard of it before. So
yeah, so we incorporated that into our hard cider brand. Barzilla's Brew is the name of our hard cider.
Oh,
so
nice.
That was what we named it after.
Nice. So so at the time, was it apples, purely apples, or was it like a working farm? Like was there corn? Was there a mix of crops?
Almost entirely peaches at the time. So there's a
that's
fascinating story there too. Yeah. So the Harvey Brayman, who owned the farm originally, they purchased the farm in the 1880s. And it wasn't a farm then, it was just trees. So they cleared off the trees, and this is prime land for growing peaches. So a lot of people don't think about Michigan when they think of peaches. They think of down south or California. They don't really think of Michigan, but we have really good climate for it. We have more mild winters, and we have summer climates that aren't so brutally hot as they are down in Georgia. So we have a very good climate for it, and we had good soil here on the farm. So peaches like sandy soil. And so that's something a lot of people don't understand is, before mobile refrigeration, before you'd have refrigerated shipping containers and so now you can go to the grocery store and get peaches from anywhere. But back in the day, you had to live relatively close by. So all the peaches that would be purchased in Chicago would come from Southwest Michigan or West Michigan.
Oh, cool.
So peaches were big money back in the day. So back in the late 1800s, the Brayman family purchased the farm. And so he was a tree salesman. And he said, well, this would be the perfect spot for growing peaches. And so I never really put two and two together. We've got a big farmhouse here on the property that was my grandparents' house. And I was living in it for about 6 months while my house was being built here on the farm. And I never really put two and two together. This is a big house. It's huge. And I asked my dad, how did the Brayman family afford to build such a big house? And he said, peaches. And I said, well, yeah, but we got some peaches. And he goes, no, you don't understand. Back in the late 1800s, it'd be the equivalent of today, like $90 to $100 per bushel wholesale to grow peaches. So peaches were big money. It was one of the the highest returns you could get on a crop.
Literally, money grows on trees.
Exactly. Yeah. So we had all the barn was built by the time we came here. The house was built by the time we came here. And it was all peaches primarily when we got here. But by that time in 1911, mobile refrigeration, refrigerated boxcars had been invented. So you could get peaches from down south. You could get peaches from anywhere. So that high dollar you could get for peaches had kind of gone away by then. So the Brayman family was looking to sell the farm. My great-great-grandfather bought it, and we really, not long after that, we diversified into apples. Apples are our primary crop now and what we're known for. But we still sell peaches. We're still proud of the quality of peach that we sell, and we sell sweet cherries, we sell nectarines, apricots, a little bit of everything.
So this really is a farm.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Because you're talking before about, and I could just see many people doing this, right? You're literally talking about, money growing on trees, peaches, the houses, I don't know, maybe a Benz, who knows? But all of a sudden now it's like, let's grow something else, right? That I'm going to assume probably isn't like the money generating revenue like peaches were. Why not just go all in on peaches? Why, like you said, diversify?
Mm-hmm. Well, so that's one thing, we talked about our wonderful Michigan climate, which sometimes isn't so wonderful. And here behind me on the tree, you can see all the apples below my shoulder level are gone. And that was from the frost damage. So peaches are very notorious for if you have a winter that's too cold, before there's even peach blossoms on the tree, the peaches will just die. So
okay.
You'll see a lot of dead limbs. So like if you got negative temperatures, you're going to start to see, severe negative temperatures, like talking like -10, which is severe for Michigan. If it's Minnesota, that's not severe, but they don't grow peaches in Minnesota.
Right.
So that's one challenge with peaches that, we do have a good climate for growing them, once it's warm weather, but that extreme cold we can reach sometimes, that can really do some damage. So
certainly.
Yeah, diversification was really key for a farm of our size. We've really got only 35 acres we can work with. That includes our parking lots, our buildings. So really, in terms of other farms, we're very quite small. We've got a small footprint. And if we wanted to survive, we had to really change our business. And that's why we are a retail-only business. That was a change my grandfather made in the 70s. So he saw that if we had stayed a wholesale farm, we wouldn't make enough to survive. So he said, we're going to change it all to retail. We're going to add a cider mill and a bakery, and we're going to sell everything directly to the consumer. And because of that, that's why we're still here.
Now, it seems that this is a common trend among apple cider producers here, is that in the 70s, you kind of had to pivot your business and not do so much wholesale and focus more on retail. Do you happen to know where this idea came from to do that?
Well, for my grandfather, he visited farms out on the East Coast. So everyone piled in the car for a road trip. And he said, if we're going to change something, we got to learn from other people who are already doing it. So they went out to Massachusetts and down into, down the coast, Maryland, Virginia, and they were touring other farms. And they were seeing cider mills. They were seeing bakeries and people that are selling direct to the customer as their primary means of business. So right. That was really an idea that he got from looking at other people. There's one big influence on us was Catoctin Mountain Orchard in Maryland. And they had a market, they had a bakery, and they had a cider mill. So we said, hey, that's something we need to do here if we want to stick around. And so my great-grandfather, he'd carried the farm through the Great Depression. So the farm looked different then. We had cows back then because you didn't have your own milk,
Yeah.
We had chickens and cows back during World War II because how else would you get your
That's true.
your food? So, when everyone's rationing, you had to supply yourself. So after the war was over, we sold all the cows. We had chickens until the late 70s. And by then, we didn't need them anymore. They were that wasn't how we were making money. That was just how my grandparents got eggs. So, so the business really changed. And especially to answer your question, I know I drifted a bit, but we were looking at, the money that was returning from selling wholesale just wasn't there. And especially with our footprint, if we had a farm 3 times the size, that would be different. It'd be much more doable. But we had, we've really only got a small footprint in an area that's, now we're surrounded by the suburbs. And so it's to our benefit now. Back, this whole area was all farms back in the day. But now that, there was a lot of that pressure of, suburban expansion here.
Right.
And now it's actually a benefit to us because we're entirely retail. All of our customers live around us. So we don't have to really work all that hard to reach the consumer when we're amongst them.
Right. And it's interesting you say that because one of the things that I noticed when I was walking around before this interview was a big old sign up front that says open year round.
Mm-hmm. That's one of our biggest hurdles to get through is, right now it's go time for fall. Everyone's thinking about cider mills and corn mazes, but all of our income comes directly from customers walking in the door. So that is really I wouldn't say our struggle, but it's our main goal is to remind people that we are here open year round. Our bakery, we've got fruit. We'll have apples in our cold storage through the month of May. And we have our winery open year round. So that is our primary objective, really to remind people that we're here because if they don't come the rest of the year, we're hurting.
Right. So now with the retail side of your business like established and you're starting to sell cider, you're starting to sell baked goods to the public, I'd kind of like to circle back to your story a little bit because you said that when you went off to college and you're like, I just want to work on the farm. I got to ask the question, why?
Well, it's there's a pride in what I do that one of my favorite parts of the business is working with customers. So not every farmer's like that. We're special here, I suppose, but we've got customers that come to us and they say, hey, do you have, a recipe for anything to do with apples? And I say, well, yeah, actually my grandmother's recipe for, apple cake, we've got it right here. And that's always a special thing is people come to us and they have a connection right to the source of their food that you wouldn't get at a grocery store. And so I really take a lot of pride in being able to connect people with that and give them some history and background on the food they're eating. There's all these new apple varieties that people have questions about. They say, I've never seen this one before. And I can say, well, that one is a cross between Honeycrisp and Zestar. And it's created this brand new apple called Evercrisp. And it's a beautiful, sweet, crunchy apple. And that's the personal touch people don't really get at the grocery store. And I can see the difference that makes to the consumer.
Well, I also think, too, that for people coming in here, you're proud of your produce and what it is that you've grown. And also, too, your knowledge is encyclopedic versus, like somebody who's just stocking the shelf at a store.
Yeah, they can't possibly be expected to know what the farmer knows. And so that's always the struggle in farming organizations. We're always talking about how do we reach the consumer? How do we connect? And I said, well, it's easy. They come in the front door. So it's easier for me than other farmers have it, certainly.
Certainly. So now you're growing up. This is a family business, right? You were sharing with me that your dad and his brothers actually own the business. You're the operations manager. So the question I got for you is, growing up the business, you're seeing this all the time. Talk to us about maybe one or two of the key challenges that you had become, versus, being just like a kid playing around the farm, maybe helping out when you can, versus all of a sudden now assuming a management role, making sure that the wheels don't come off the cart, so to speak.
Yeah, I'd say part of the challenge is it's similar to anyone else who manages a business in that, there's sacrifices that have to be made when you're a manager of a business. So this time of year, I work 7 days a week. So we're open Sunday to Saturday from Labor Day through the end of October. Used to be we'd do it through Christmas, but that was getting to be a bit much. So that was quite a stretch there, working 7 days a week. So I'd say that's one of the challenges is the time commitment it takes. that's part of being a farm, but also part of managing a business. And a lot of other managers would probably understand the struggle there, that there's a lot of personal sacrifices that have to be made in life that, growing up, I had a lot of friends that I couldn't do a lot of stuff with on Saturdays. They'd say, hey, we're going to the Michigan State game. And I'd say, well, I can't join you.
Let me know how that goes.
Yeah, I got work to do. So I listen to it on the radio while I work, but so there's some challenges there. A lot of environmental challenges too. So 2012, I mentioned a little bit about the frost damage you can see behind me here, and there's some scarring from frost you'll see on these apples, and hail damage we got this year. But 2012 is the year that stands out in recent memory. So that was the year that most of Michigan lost all of its fruit. So we had that was the year we were in 80-degree weather in March. And we all knew right away, well, it's not going to happen for us this year. So everything was in bloom in March, and then we swung back into winter. All the flowers froze right on the tree, and we didn't have any fruit. So that's a year we lost, apples, peaches, cherries, and there's a lot of that diversification we talk about. Sweet cherries are a lot more tender than apples.
Right.
So we could have kind of a frosty year and lose some cherries, but hey, we still got apples. But that was a year where we lost it all.
Yeah.
And so that was a hard year. We had... we said, well, we'll work later, make more donuts. I mean, that's all we really got to sell. So we sold more donuts. We stayed open in the winery later to try and sell more wine. And we had our corn maze, of course. But, so that was a tough year that you got to get through. And there's moments like that in farming where, you're throwing a curveball. And I would say that's probably the biggest challenge is the unpredictability, stuff you can't prepare for.
Right. And you brought up an interesting point before when you're talking about, it's the same for every business owner, but I think it's something completely different when the business owner is also a farmer. Because like you said, you have to be on if the weather changes or whatever. You're constantly monitoring your crops. Is it going to rain? Are we going to have frost and things like that? And that's gotta sometimes keep you awake at night wondering about that.
Yeah. So that's one thing with, this year we've had, because of that early spring that we had where everything was really early, that meant all of our fruit is about 2 weeks early this year. So that includes cherries, peaches, apples. And so there's, again, that challenge. So I was signed up on a trip through my church to go hiking out in Montana at the end of June. And I thought, well, I might miss 1 day of cherry picking. So that'll work out pretty well. I missed half of cherry picking, most of cherry picking, in fact, because we picked all of our cherries by the end of June this year, which I've never done. That's never happened. It's just such a weird year. And this year, we hadn't really staffed up for fall yet. And here I am picking all the fruit. Normally, I do a lot of picking myself anyway, but not in August. So I was getting the corn maze all set up and then going to pick fruit. So we're picking peaches, picking apples. And I said, Gala, I don't pick that till September usually, but we were picking it in August. So this year's felt like a little bit like we're on turbo mode. There's a lot of stuff that I did half the work back in last month, and I still feel like I'm behind.
Right. For our audience, we're going to take a quick break and thank our sponsors. When we come back, Allan's going to take some time to talk to us about what you can expect when you come here to Robinette's. We'll see you after the break. Hey, if you are enjoying these great interviews, just take a moment and go to totalmichigan.com/join, and you can get these episodes sent directly to your inbox because there's a lot more great stories coming. See you there. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Total Michigan, where we interview ordinary Michiganders doing some pretty extraordinary things. I'm your host, Cliff Duvenois. Today, we're at Robinette's Apple House and Winery, located just outside of Grand Rapids. Sitting with me today is Allan. And Allan, before the break, we were talking about actually a lot of the struggles that it has, like being a farm. Even if you diversify, that's not always a guarantee you're going to have product. What I would like to do is I'd like to change gears and start talking about what it is that Robinette's offers, because you mentioned before about how you're offering wine. You now have hard cider. So when did you start adding these things to your store, your retail?
So back in 2006, that was when we decided to add the winery to our business here. So up until that point, we'd still had a lot of, our winery was called the Gift Barn because we did a lot of gift sales. We did Department 56, villages, figurines, that sort of thing. That was one part of the business that did quite well in the 90s. But, the internet came along. Suddenly, gift sales are way down in the basement. They're nothing compared to what they used to be. And so we said, well, that was a big part of our business that is just gone. So we need to reinvent a little bit and try and use our space to the best of its ability. And my uncle Bill is our winemaker. So that was a passion project he had on the side just for himself that he would do. And so we said, well, let's try hard cider. So we started Robinette cellars in the barn where all those gift sales used to be.
Right.
And so that was 2006, and that was really the first product. Up until that point, when my grandfather changed the business in the 70s, very early 70s, we got the cider mill, and then we added the donuts. And that was, then people wanted somewhere to sit to eat their donuts, so we added the dining room. And then someone said, now that you got a dining room, you should do lunches. So we added lunches. And then, so a lot of the changes to our business were a reaction to consumer desire or consumer wants.
Right.
And so that was really the first thing where we said, let's just try it. So no one had been saying, where's your hard cider? I'm surprised you don't have any. We just decided to try it. And so that's been a huge part of our business. That was, we started that before the Great Recession. And I would say that helped get us through that. If we'd just been relying on fresh fruit sales, it would have been very different. And so that's same with our corn mazes when we started our corn maze in 2009. And so we'd had hayrides on the farm since the 1980s, but really that coming to the farm for an experience wasn't really something we had gone fully into until 2009 when we added the corn maze. So after the corn maze, and we really focused on, people don't want to just come to the farm to buy apples and go home. They'd like to spend some time outside and
have the kids burn off energy.
Exactly. So we added our inflatable bounce pillow in 2014. We started doing U-pick apples. We'd always done U-pick cherries since World War II, but U-pick apples was something we'd never done. We picked them and sold them inside. Well, that was something people said, we'd like to pick our own apples.
Right.
And we hadn't seen, demand for that before. So that was really a shift. So now a huge part of our business is the experience around coming to the farm rather than just what you can buy there.
And I like this idea about U-pick. I like that. Where did that come from?
So on this farm in the 1940s, we'd always had labor on the farm we had local help to pick all of our cherries before then. They'd be picked and then brought to a buyer in the early 1900s. Well, my great-grandfather was running the farm, and during World War II, all the young working-age men were off fighting a war overseas. So all of a sudden, we didn't have any labor. And he said, well, let's have the customers come and pick it themselves. And that's how we'd done it primarily ever since. So I'll still pick cherries enough to sell by the pound. My dad, my uncles, and I will pick cherries to sell by the pound, but primarily the way we sell our cherries is U-pick. So people come right to us, they get a bucket and a ladder, and they pick as much as they want to pick. And that was the start for that. And so it was a natural shift for apples. Now, I do that a little bit differently. We decided early on that I wanted to sell the bag ahead of time. So I have a peck bag that I sell, and then they fill the bag. And if they want more than one bag, they can. But that was really for the ease of when we're in cherry season, we're early July typically. So we're busy for cherry season, but we're not fall busy. And
right.
So if we were going to be weighing with scales and how much did you have, and oh wait, let me start over, that wouldn't work in a fall setting. So it was early on we said, okay, we'll sell the bag, they fill the bag, and then they go on their way. We don't have to interact with the customer a second time. So that was primarily out of necessity for labor and for just the flow of business.
Right.
So with U-pick apples, that's been a huge part now, and that's what we're sitting in right now is my U-pick orchard. We'll be moving our U-pick operation right here this Saturday. So we've got Empire,
Cool.
Golden Delicious, Fuji, Gala, Jana Gold, all the fall favorites. And that was that's one thing that we found that when we got rid of Red Delicious, we used to offer Red Delicious for U-pick because that was all that was available at that time. That was the only apple we had that was ready right then.
Ah, gotcha.
And people would show up and say, "Oh, we'd love to pick apples," and I say, "Yeah, I've got Red Delicious right over here," and they go, "Oh." It's like, well, we hung on to them because it costs money to replace trees, and we were focusing on adding more Honeycrisp in other parts of the farm and
right.
adding other varieties, replacing some, and finally it was time to get rid of those trees. And right now I'm in the process of growing Ludacrisp and Crimson Crisp that ripen around the same time. They're 2 years in the ground now. Next year they'll have a decent crop on them, and we can offer those for you pick next year.
That's amazing. So I grab one of these bags.
Yes.
I walk over here. Can I grab like some of the Empires and some of the Galas and stuff, or is the bag like just strictly one type of apple?
Oh, I always encourage people to try some of everything, especially Empire, because we've got Empire here, which is a great, it's one of my favorite eating apples. That's pretty unusual. It's a very old apple. No one really seeks it out, but it's a good baking apple too. So it's good for that one. We got Golden Delicious here. It's one of my favorite tasting apples right off the tree. And of course, we've got Ida Red, and we've got Jonagold and Gala. You know, Jonagold and Gala are favorites for eating, but Ida Red's a good baking apple. So I've got a little bit of everything here, and so that's where that comes in again. People have questions about, hey, what's the best for a pie? And that's one of the number one questions we get. And I can say, you know, Ida Red, we have Northern Spy. We don't offer that for you pick because it's quite a bit later. But we sell a lot of Northern Spy, and that's one you don't see at the grocery store anymore. But that one's famous for its use in apple pies.
Right.
And so Macintosh, we have a lot of. That's great for applesauce. It cooks down to a nice fine sauce. So that's I always encourage people to take some of everything, and if they're going to make a pie, you should use some of this one.
Oh, that's great. So let's kind of explore that a little bit more, because if somebody is coming here, they've never been here before, what would be, you know, some of the things that they would try, some of the baked goods would they try? Would you recommend they come out here and do the U-Pick? Talk to us. What would you recommend? Yeah,
so corn maze is always something we highlight here. That's one I'd love for people to try. We've got a 6.5 acre corn maze. It's in the shape of Charlie Brown and the Great Pumpkin this year. U-Pick apples is, this year we're a little bit light. So while I do encourage you to come pick apples, whenever whoever's listening, when you hear this, we may not have U-Pick apples right at that moment. Right now, we're waiting for these varieties to ripen. So there's people asking right now. So I will say this weekend we will have U-Pick apples. Definitely come and try that. But we've also got wine tasting. We've got hayrides on the weekends. On Sundays, we have a petting zoo brought in. So we've got, wine tasting is year round. We've got our bounce pillow. There's something for everybody here.
And what would be like, because you've got quite an extensive collection of like wines. What is there particular ones that you would recommend people try?
Yeah, so Passionate Peach Spumante is our number one seller. So that one's very sweet. It tastes like peach pop. Peach soda for the non-Michiganders who are listening. So it's a sparkling peach beverage it's very sweet and very good. The hard cider is my favorite. So that's more of a drier taste. So it's not like if you were to have like Angry Orchard. Angry Orchard's quite sweet, and if you were to just go from Angry Orchard to ours, you might be a little bit surprised at how dry it is. But you can drink more than one bottle without getting sick to your stomach because it's so sweet. So I'm partial to our hard cider. I like our cherry wine as well. That one's a very good one.
Right.
But peach is the number one. And we've also got a chocolate wine that's nipping on the heels of peach. It's very close behind it in sales.
Chocolate wine.
Yes. So it's more similar to a chocolate liqueur, but it's in terms of percentage of alcohol, it's more in line with wine. So it's that one's a very good one. That's one I can't have too much of in one sitting. It's so sweet. But it's one that would go really well in a milkshake. If you were to mix it into a milkshake, it goes really well with that. So,
ooh, I feel a lot of people drooling.
Yes.
While they're watching this, because I definitely am. And so you talk about how you're basically open year round. Now, is it just primarily the tasting room and the gift shops that are open year round? I mean, could somebody come here like earlier in the season if they wanted to, like in the late spring or something like that, and you would have all this set up? How does that work?
So yeah, primarily we've got our bakery and our winery open year round. So all the buildings are open to the public year round. After Christmas, we'll be 5 days a week up through next Labor Day. So that's Tuesday through Saturday. This time of year, we've got extended hours and we're open 7 days a week. But so we will cherry season early July or late June. That's when we really start picking back up again and offering more fresh fruit. So that's part of our business model is having cherries, between cherries and apricots and nectarines and pears. We want something to sell for as much of the year as possible. I mean, being a retail fruit farm, if we went through all summer without having anything to offer, it'd be a big fail on our part.
Sure. If somebody did want to come here and check the place out, what would be the best way for them to find you online? What's that?
Yeah, so Robinette's Apple House, that's Haus, that's German spelling, but that's our Instagram. Robinettes.com is our website, and Robinette's on Facebook. Those are our three primary. But yeah, we're right on the corner of 4 Mile and East Beltline, just 10 minutes outside of Grand Rapids, 2 miles from the city limits. And yeah, we're here and we're ready for fall. I mean, we're in the middle of it now.
Perfect. Allan, thank you so much for taking time to chat with us today. Really do appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Cliff. I really appreciate the time.
And for our audience, you can always roll on over to totalmichigan.com and click on Allan's interview and get all the links that he mentioned above. We'll see you next time when we talk to another Michigander doing some pretty extraordinary things. We'll see you then.